Well, the Embassy of India has successfully rescued 47 Indian nationals who had been trapped in the Chinese-run cyber scam centers at the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone in Bokeo province of Laos. Of these, 29 were handed over to the embassy by Lao authorities after their crackdown on illegal activities in the Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone, while other 18 had approached the embassy in distress, seeking help. While 30 Indian nationals have arrived in India, the remaining 17 await travel arrangements to leave from Laos. So far, as many as 635 Indian nationals have safely returned from Laos to India. Well, folks, this is not the first instance of Indian nationals being forcefully coerced into job scams abroad. 10 days ago, a group of 21 Indian nationals were saved from a scam center in Shwekoko, Myanmar. Prior to that, on the 24th of May 2024, 60 Indian citizens were rescued from Cambodia, where they had been deceived into illegal employment. These rescues are just a few examples of the many that have occurred this year and perhaps last year as well. Indian nationals have to be very cautious of scammers who attempt to deceive and lure them into joining fraudulent centers. Being aware of available resources to do a thorough research of organizations before joining them is of utmost importance. On that note, in today's telecast, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the same. How can Indian nationals protect themselves from fake job scams? What kind of infrastructure, resources, personnel are necessary to carry out a crackdown on this nexus or this thuggery that has been going on for a very long time? Let's start with our guest. Joining us on the show is Mr. Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, Mr. Sandeep Chachra, Executive Director of ActionAid Association India, human rights defender, also joins us on the program. Mr. Sumit Peer, Senior Political Commentator, with us on the program as well. Last but not the least, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, Senior Journalist, with us on the show as well. Sumit Peer, I'll begin with you. Well, this has been going on sporadically. This has been going on uninterrupted. We have seen the Indians being recruited into the Russian army as well, fraudulently. We have seen similar scams happen all across the world. What's going on over here? What kind of an intervention is needed, or what kind of a ministerial setup or inclusion is needed from the center as well, Sumit, to stop this menace? Obviously, these people pay a lot of money. They are looking for a brighter future. They're looking for greener pastures. They're looking for opportunities to earn their bread and perhaps even support their families back home. But the fact of the matter is they're not able to distinguish, which agents or which agencies to rely upon and whom to trust. Why don't we have laws about this? Why don't we have a systematic assessment of why these people should not be going to these countries in an illegal manner?
Vinny, thank you very much for having me on your show. Look, whenever you apply for a visa, either you apply for a business visa, you apply for an employment visa, or you apply for a tourist visa. So there are few countries which are nefariously known for having such kind of rackets which are going on: Laos, Cambodia, even some parts of Vietnam, Myanmar and all. I think we should need very high amount of scrutiny when we see younger men and women leaving for these countries, even if it's a tourist visa or it's a business visa. We have to scrutinize them, we have to make them aware, and the tightening of the visa has to happen. And all these scams and all which are happening there, I think our agency should be talking to, making the people aware of that. Unfortunately, these scamsters are too advanced. They will find ways and means to kind of lure people into this. But at an immigration level, if we have some additional checks and balances which are for these people at embassies level while issuing the visas, which are some additional checks and balances for these people, and when we know these countries are nefarious in design, look, there is very difficult for government of India to liberate everybody. I mean, whatever has been done is fantastic work, but I'm very sure we need, whatever number we are talking, maybe 10 times of that people are still trapped somewhere in the world. Now, the challenge is that what government can do and what we can do at the awareness level. I think it's a two thing. You have to do what the government has to do legally at the immigration and all. The embassies have to play an important role. What we have to do at the awareness level. I think INB ministry should take it up and make it a point that these things are highlighted and spoken to every here and then. It's something, it is like what they say in English, too good to be true. When you see something like too good to be true, you have to start doubting it. It cannot be true. That is what the whole game plan is here, and this is all Chinese run, Vineet. These Chinese are trying to get Indians. Earlier they were running these betting apps and all from here, but after the crackdown for the government, this all Gorak Danda stopped. So what they are doing is now they are trying to get Indians, trick them into a job. Usually the route is Malaysia. You get people to Malaysia. Then Malaysia, you move them to Laos, and once they reach the Laos, the passports are taken. Then they are kept captives, and they are forced to do this kind of forgery. So these are, when we know the routes, when we know the traps, when we know the countries, when we know the people, we have to be very, very stringent on them. And anybody who is involved in India, helping them, abetting them, and trying to facilitate this work, must get the harshest punishment. Unless and until we do that, it will be very, very difficult. We need to liberate people, because we don't know. There are more than 200 countries in the world. Where all can you go? Where all can you trap people? And it is lucky that we have got some people back, but may not be the case always. Even people need to be themselves aware of, what are they getting into? They cannot be completely sorry. I'm sorry here, I might sound a bit cynical. They can't be completely naive. Ye padhe likhe log hai bhai. They are not anguta chaps. They know what these jobs are. It's not too good to be true. Okay, you go there, you will be doing something. We'll get these SMS every day. Click on this link, you will get 10 rupees. Click on that thing, you will get 5 rupees, and all this. So awareness is the key. And all these people who get entrapped into them, we need, with due respect to all of them, we can't say they're completely naive. We can't say they completely do not know what is happening. We can't say they've been completely tricked into it. So it's a multi-pronged approach which can help solve the problem. But yes, the government of India is doing what it can. I think INB ministry would have a big, big role to play. We must have these campaigns going all over, so that these forgeries and tricks are don't get fermented in the ground. How many SMSs and mails we get from banks? Okay, this is a scam, this is a trick, don't click on this link, don't do this link. So this must be done at an immigration level. All these nefarious countries, you should have very stringent guidelines in place. And let me tell you, Vineet, based on my experience of traveling abroad, I have seen our immigration officers, they can get from the, कहते हैं ना, हवा से बात उन्हें पता लगती है. I have seen them, there are a lot of chaps who are standing in line in front of me. क्या करने जा रहा है? नहीं, ये पेपर लिया, go back. They know what is happening. Give them the power, give them the discretion to question some people where I'm more doubtful. If you give them the power and discretion, I'm very sure a lot of problem can be, scuttled. Well, you can't eliminate it, but scuttle a lot of problem of it. Vineet.
Mr. Chacha, you've seen the ins and outs of these scams. Why are people, so actively, I'm using this word purposely, why are these people so actively vulnerable in the age of social media and falling into the hands of these scamsters, and basically, repeating these mistakes over and over again? What do you think is going on over here?
Thank you for having me here. And you see, there are both push and pull factors for migration. So there is what Sumit ji was speaking to, the bright light effect, and you were speaking to, that we'll make some extra money. But there's also a push factor. We'll come to that. But be as it may, there's a structural basis to it. So I'd like to draw your attention to that. You see, the last year, the parliament submission, 13 million people of Indian workers work abroad. So that's a large number. And if you go by the data, the parliamentary data itself, between 2019 and June of 2023, as per the parliament question answer, 48,000 some numbers of people had reported abuse of non-payment of wages, delayed wages. But in this case, as we saw, confinement, physical confinement, deprivation of basic necessities, food and so on and so forth, these fall into what is called forced labor. And globally too, Vineetji, and in India too, the question of economic migrants or migration for work is on the rise. ILO's report notes it, 2022, the latest ILO report on forced labor and modern forms of slavery tells us that 28 million people globally are into forced labor. Or not all economic migrants are forced labor, but there's a large chunk of people, an increasing chunk of people who are in forced labor, what Sumit ji was speaking to, duped, given false promises. So I think there is a large issue there. There's a push-pull factor, both operating. You counted a number of instances. And I think structurally a lot more work needs to happen. At one level, it is right that awareness needs to happen. People get duped. It's not just educated people. Everybody gets duped. So I think a lot more awareness is needed, but there are structural dimensions. You see the recruitment that happens by these agencies. I think we need to oversight it. There have already been some sort of advances in that regard, but we need to oversight these recruitment processes, because that process of abuse starts from the recruitment itself, whether recruitment happens online, whether recruitment happens at the physical centers in India, or whether recruitment happens virtually, remotely. I think that's something that we need to sort of look at. India, time has come. A lot of our people will be going out, will continue to keep going out. There are dimensions of and questions of work back home. What kind of dignified employment are we creating? So those issues are interlinked. We need work on that dimension as well, so such that people are not forced to go out. At least that can be contained. But needless to say, we know people will go out, and therefore we need to be part of the global force to actually argue for and protect rights of migrant workers, whoever that may be. The International Convention for Protection of Rights of Migrant Workers, 2003, it was sort of floated. Barely, many countries have not signed it. The northern countries which house labor haven't signed it. India hasn't signed it. South Africa hasn't ratified it. So I think those things we need to ratify. We haven't ratified it because we are both a source and a destination point. So I think we need to sort of, argue globally for a protection of rights of migrant workers and be that force, and not join the other side of the force, which is arguing for protectionism, which is arguing for nativistic sort of tendencies. So I think we need to sort of be clear of where we are headed. We need to make sure, you see, the spine of protection lies in the inspection regimes. So we need to be part of the global force which actually strengthens labor inspection regimes, because that's where protections happen. That's where we ensure that, perpetrators don't get away. Perpetrators are sort of put to the law. That's not really happening. So, you rescue people, but those guys recruit more people. We've had this experience. My organization back in 2014 actually rescued 37 migrant workers from Saudi Arabia. Now, one of them had died, and all that they were demanding was a dead body be sent back home to the district in Bihar. The then late Honorable Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj intervened to get them back, and we had to get them rehabilitated here. So I think it's a long story. We need work on many fronts. I think this whole question of looking at hotspots, some hotspots were pointed out by Sumitji in his earlier intervention, Laos, Cambodia, so on and so forth, Vietnam. I think we already know what those hotspots are. Gulf states are hotspots. Data tells us that a large majority of cases of abuse are coming from the 6 Gulf states, but increasingly Southeast Asia as well. So we need to sort of look at it. Private sector, I'm afraid, and I want to say it, 63% of those in forced labor, and ILO tells us this, are actually in the supply chains in the private sector. So we need to be regulating the labor employment conditions in the private sector globally, in the global corporations and their supply chains. We know where the hotspots are, where the problems are, where the troubles are. But back home once again, we need to be protecting our own people. We definitely need much more advances in generating gainful, dignified, socially protected employment. Globally also, we need to be arguing for these tendencies of social protection of migrant workers. The ministry has done step-by-step advance. The migrant workers resource centers have been set up, by the overseas ministry. A lot more work is needed by the Indian embassies, setting up help desks, setting up designated officers. This is the future, and I think we need to be getting there. We need to plan for that much better. I think initial steps, and we hear of cases when workers are being brought back. We've heard of very many cases. The film Dunki itself talks to how these scams happen. But I personally feel systematic structural solutions are the way forward. Thank you, Vinitji.
All right. Let's also rope in Ambassador Kapoor into this conversation. Ambassador Kapoor, in your rich experience, your long experience, what can these anomalies of intent be attributed to, and what can governments do here, basis of what Sumit Peer and what Mr. Chachra have also just articulated?
Well, thank you, Vineet, and I appreciate the comments by both our panelists. They are very correct, and I reiterate absolutely their views. I also wish to state the following, that first of all, you have India's great pool of expertise in IT, which is very well recognized in the world and which is in great demand all over the world. Now that can be utilized for both good and for bad. In this case, it is being used for bad. Now, also we have the issue of demographics. India has the largest pool of youth population, young population in the whole world. So they are also looking for job opportunities. And if these people are offered jobs in their professions, in their fields of, cyber or IT or cyber security or any of these fields, then they are smart enough, first of all, to do due diligence of the offer of the company which is offering that. And secondly, the embassies of those countries in Delhi also need to be approached along with the consulate generals as to, please let me know about this company, I've got this offer. So they have to send across that offer, because once you send across that copy of that offer, which shows that you're being offered $100 an hour, whereas the average wage may be $2 an hour or $3 an hour. So the embassy will have to respond that, no, this is not this fraudulent. Similarly, the embassy of India in that country can also help in this regard. So they have to approach those embassies, and it is not difficult to approach those embassies through their websites, through their public emails, etc., or the phone calls. So that is the other aspect. Immigration has already been addressed, so I won't get into that. But the other aspect is also, we have to identify the money trail. Where is that $100 or millions of dollars coming from? And how do we expose that? Because if it is Chinese money, which it is likely, and there is this golden triangle, I had worked as ambassador in Cambodia at that time. Those times, these scandals had not erupted, but there were a lot of other scandals of, drugs and sex and terrorism and gun running. So when you have so much of money floating around, and that golden triangle is between Laos, Myanmar and Thailand. So that was like a lawless land where these mafia would operate, and primary core of that money would come from Chinese people or Chinese agents or Chinese sources. Now that also has expanded massively all over the world, because even in Mexico you have drug gangs. In Colombia, with the Chinese support, also you have now drug gangs. In Venezuela and so many countries. Now they are pumping in drugs, for example, all over the world, also to impact the youth of the Western world, which has got impacted very badly. So all this is interlinked. The slave scandal, labor slaves, issues, the aspect of migration, the aspect of job offers, the aspect of drugs, the aspect of terrorism, gun running, sex. So how do you, it's a very, very big problem. It's not going to be easy to resolve. But as Chachra also said, that there has to be systematic analysis, systematic understanding and systematic solutions to these problems, so that you have better future for these youth who may be genuinely looking out for a job, but they are carried away by those sort of offers. And then their passports, for example, we would come across cases where the passports would be kept by the employers, so that you could not even move around the country or go back to your country. So that also, those issues are also there. So you have to also, at the sourcing point of it, identify the travel agencies or the immigration, agencies in the country which are offering you those visa services and those immigration services to those countries along with the job offers. So they have to be also put in the blacklist by the Indian authorities. So it is a multi-pronged approach which is necessary, and it will take time and it will take a lot of effort, because as long as you have that pool of people available who are looking out for jobs, it's not going to be easy, but it needs to be tackled. Back to you, Vinny.
All right, Gautam, where do you stand on this? Obviously, everything is not well. The streamlining part on behalf of the agencies, that are part of this nexus, and the government, seems to be far apart at this point in time.
Well, I think it is part of the Chinese, network, where they believe not only in making money, but in making war by all means. So you've got, in places, first of all, that they've infiltrated, like Laos, which is, thoroughly indebted, Cambodia, thoroughly indebted to the Chinese. And then they set up their, if you like, less than savory businesses in such places. Now, this is cyber hacking. Cyber hacking, it's sort of a multiple illegality. One, you capture people, you take away their passports, you starve them, you know, make them live in inhuman conditions, and then you get them to do illegal stuff, which puts the Chinese once removed because it's Indians doing it. It's diabolical. Now, this is something that they are doing in a very methodical manner. They've done it in this country where they come in and sell something, repatriate all the money illegally, and then when they're caught, it's too late because you know, they've repatriated thousands of crores, which we are not able to get back. We eventually shut them down, but the damage is done. Quite often they use Indians in India as fronts and go-betweens. So, you know, these are all new challenges. It isn't just cyber warfare, which is happening right here in India with, you know, specialists sitting in small towns, you know, scamming people on the internet, preying on their credulousness, preying on their naivete. It's the same with the workers. The workers are thinking, okay, look, it pays well, off I go. The people who facilitate them are probably not as clued up as they might be. Years ago, similar things used to happen when workers went to the Gulf. Gradually, these things are rooted out both by the host country as well as by, you know, we used to have a stamp on the passport saying protector of immigrants. This went on for years. I don't know when it still exists or not, but when I worked in the Gulf, you needed one of these things. A stamp saying protector of immigrants is past this man for going, and he has a proper contract. So this is not new, but there is a aggressive intent of the government of China behind all of this. Any which way you can degrade the situation of Indians, that is kosher, that is what they want to do. And it is time we, you know, started modifying our policies. The other panelists have spoken up on specifics with regard to this kind of thing. But it takes, I think, a broader approach in the MEA, a desk that goes into a sort of a counter, if you like, warfare situation by other means that the Indians must adopt. To some extent, we are doing this in our intelligence, you know, activities, but obviously we don't know very much about the specifics. Or indeed, nobody's going to stand up and say, yes, the Indians are doing this.
All right.
But
okay.
we need, neither the Chinese for that matter. But this is the world today. And India is under threat because India is rising. So if you can take the one thing that we have, lots of people, and put them into jeopardy, it embarrasses us. It makes us work hard in the MEA to repatriate them. It's costly, and it is, you know, it shows us up
All
in
right.
a shabby light.
We are running out of time as well, Gautam. We'll try and in fact accommodate you know, some of your pending thoughts on our way out. We'll take concluding thoughts from our guests. We'll start with Sumit Peer and then Mr. Chatra. Sumit.
Vineet, look, there is very important thing here. We have stopped a lot of Chinese activity in India. We have put a lot of their investment in scrutiny. We are not letting them do their scams in India. Now, what Chinese have decided, they're using other countries. They're trying to get our people. Again, the motive of all these apps, all these missions, all these motives is to destabilize India and to cause financial anarchy in India. We have to be very careful of the bigger design. Let's not shoot the messenger, but look at the bigger design. The bigger design is creating financial anarchy in India and using Indians, getting them out of India and letting an Indian do it. कहते हैं ना, जिसका जूता उसी का सर. That is how exactly China wants to play the game.
Mr. Chatra?
Yeah, two specific points. I think I mean, it has been the case, but I would like to argue and reiterate that labor and workers needs to become a central fulcrum in our diplomacy, what I call a political and social diplomacy. And I think that we know that migration largely, Vinitji, has been for the good. It is voluntary. People will continue to go out for various reasons, both a push and pull. There are many, many varied reasons. So without getting into and analyzing that at the moment, labor needs to be a central fulcrum of our political diplomacy going ahead. And I think that's important to say. Second, I'd like to draw attention to the specific segment of women and the whole question of within international migrants, forced labor, a large chunk and an advancing chunk globally of our country, but also all other countries, of women who are in much, much worse conditions. As Ambassador Kapoor was saying, a lot of them into forced commercial sexual exploitation, drug peddling, and so on and so forth. So very, very terrible conditions. And I think in this whole thing that I mentioned earlier and other speakers have mentioned, I think the question of how do you deal with the question of trafficking of women, with the question of labor migrants, women labor migrants, needs much more specific attention. It's a subject we often talk in very gender neutral terms. So I think that I would like to take a gendered approach to this whole issue as well. Thank you.
That's a good point. That's a great twist that you have provided us and our audience with, Mr. Chachra. Ambassador Kapoor, concluding thoughts, sir, and then we end with Gautam.
Thank you, Vineet. The Chinese have developed a lot of expertise and continue to expand their expertise in trying to beat you using your own systems. Like if you have democracy, they'll use democratic means to subvert you. Use your legal channels to subvert you. Use your media channels to subvert you. Use your academic channels to subvert you. Use your industry to subvert you. So now, how do you cope with that multi-pronged approach? It requires a lot of strategic thinking, and it requires a lot of tactical thinking also. So that, I guess, the countries which are mostly impacted have to sit together on the table, understand the challenges which are posed, and then devise their strategy going ahead. Thank you, Vinny.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.